man, he was born lame. Amen. So for 40 years, he was in this condition. And he was carried daily by those faithful friends to the gate so that he could ask for charitable contributions from those that were entering the temple. He was dependent upon spare change from other people. In other words, Howard Thurman, Dr. Howard Thurman, said it like this: the certain man was one who lived with his back against the wall. Amen? Because the certain man had some crippling circumstances outside, where the outside world would have considered his position to be lame, dependent, downcast, downtrodden, dispossessed, disinherited, unchurched, unemployed, underemployed, ostracized, poor, you name it. I had to go Shirley Caesar on that one, amen. But he did not qualify for any food stamps, amen. He did not qualify for Medicaid or disability. He could not even afford an iPad, a laptop, or internet or the cell phone to log online to apply for some public assistance, amen. He was unable to pull himself up by his own boots, amen. Yet, with the help of a few faithful friends, they would carry him to that gate called Beautiful. And it enabled him to beg for meager self-provision. Amen? Now, the Beautiful Gate for the temple was this large and ornate gate made of Corinthian brass inside the Temple Mount on the eastern side that was designed for religious segregation. Amen. They're right. I said religious segregation because women, Gentiles, and the lame could not go in. Amen. They were not welcome in the temple. Sadly, even in today's modern segregated churches, evangelism works best for the lame and the helpless outside the walls of the church. Amen. Right. Now, the position of this certain man was strategic. Bear with me. Although he thought he was there to receive money, God had him exactly where he needed to be to receive the miracle that was coming his way. Amen. Many times God positions us before he blesses us. Amen. We may feel forgotten, but God knows exactly where we are. His position may have caused him, the certain man, to feel embarrassed, to feel ashamed as he asked Peter and John for money. After all, begging was not a noble act. Amen. In fact, Peter and John had to fix their eyes on him, noting his physical, mental, emotional, and psychological situation. But most of all, Peter and John saw his spiritual condition and they had compassion upon him. Amen. Now, many people overlook the physically, mentally challenged, but not Peter and John. In order to make optimal contact with the certain man, they even had to get down a little lower on the ground so that they could actually see him for who he was. Amen. And in fact, this is where it can be sometimes frustrating because some people get really upset when they're in crippling circumstances. Amen. But perhaps God has positioned us there for a purpose so that our next miracle can unravel. Amen. All right. The gate was not his destination. Amen. It was only his launching pad. Amen. If we fact check, Joseph was positioned in prison before he was positioned in the palace. Amen.